you probably don't know this, but it took me probably 5 attempts, maybe, at recording this episode, primarily because I was unsure of how to actually pursue talking about this particular topic. And honestly, the topic really has been bouncing back and forth for the past few weeks, because sometimes when you're recording or when you're planning out your content, it can be hard when you're just trying to come from a very genuine and authentic place, and you really just got to be able to discern which direction you want to go into. And so this particular topic that we're going to be talking about today definitely took some time to marinate. So I hope that you guys enjoy this episode as much as I'm going to enjoy sharing this story. Let's start off by saying, for one, I appreciate everybody just watching. I appreciate y'all listening and tuning in as much as y'all have been. We're like, 5 episodes in, and honestly, it is a blessing to be able to share with y'all just my own experiences, my knowledge and wisdom that I've gained over, just living in life and experiencing life. And primarily, I really just am thankful that you all are able to get some value out of this. So those that are listening, those that are going to be listening in the future, I really, really do appreciate you, because it means something to me just being able to share with you all and encourage you all through times like, this. We're in the midst of seasonal depression, so that's really big. Let's go ahead, and before we get really even into the episode deeply, we're sitting at November 30th. So actually, this is the last day of November. Very funny, actually, now that I think about it. The reasoning behind that was not intentional, but hey, we're here. So no, it's November 30th. The time is 2:44, and we're about to start recording this episode. So let's get into it. The title that you'll see for this episode, I think I'm gonna go with this title, is what seasonal depression did for me. And it's an interesting title when you read it like that, because even for me reading it, I'm like, like, for me is a very interesting word choice, right? And the reason why I use that word choice is for a few reasons, and we're going to get into it in this episode, because today I'm going to be sharing my personal experience with seasonal depression and some things that, have happened to me, some things that I have experienced, things that I've done during that time, good, bad, ugly, whatever kind of comes out, and we're just gonna talk about it. We're gonna discuss it. I want to start pretty much as to how my depression kind of presents itself. I feel like I'm like a high functioning depressive person, and so like what I mean by that is when I'm dealing with a depressive episode, or I'm experiencing a moment where I don't know why I just got tense. Sometimes when you talk about things, you go back, you kind of just have a moment. Let me take a breath. Alright, so I feel like I'm a high functioning depressive, and I say that because when you're dealing with depression, most times, I think in mainstream culture, they will paint this picture that depression looks this one particular way, which is that you're just down bad, you're sad, you're not being able to get out of bed, and X, Y, and Z. And depression can present itself this way, but that is not the end all be all. It's not the only form of depression, especially when you're talking about seasonal depression. And so I feel like, we kind of miss the mark with certain people, because a lot of times, especially when you're like growing in maturity or in knowledge of things, you're not able to really put a name to a word, right? It's like it's like this phenomenon that happens, especially for me, where a lot of times where I personally actually can remember people's names, but maybe not their face. And it can happen in reverse. I can remember somebody's face but not their name, and it just happens. And a lot of people, I feel like, go through that type of thought process. But in that same regard, with depression, it doesn't necessarily have to have this type of presentation. It can present itself as something else entirely, and that still counts. It's still valid, and it's hard for people that go through this idea of the high functioning depressive, because I kind of just made that term up. You know what I'm saying, for myself at least. But I feel like it's a real thing. People that go around and they're doing different things. I had an episode that I kind of talked about this season, where you are someone that they make seem like everything's going right. On the outward appearance, you are, still dressing the way that you want to dress and going out and doing things, smiling, laughing, enjoying good times. But at the end of the day, you kind of come back home and everything's just cascading in your world, right? Everything's collapsing, and you're going into this mental space where things just are not as they seem on the outside, and you're kind of confused because you're like, well, maybe I'm just sad, or whatever. I'm still grieving, but in reality, you're dealing with a possible depressive episode, or even seasonal depression itself, right? And for me, as I've dealt with this journey over some years, I've been able to really reflect and see exactly what things I was doing at those times and how it reflected this picture of a depressive episode. And it always seemed to like happen around like the fall into winter time. And I thought about it for my birthdays because I enjoy my birthday most times than usual. I think in the last, like, I would say probably the last 2 to 3 years have been some of the most, like, I don't want to say bad birthdays, but they've been pretty rough because of the circumstances of my life. Personally, I lost my grandfather, I believe, in 2021, and so that year made it extremely difficult for me to really enjoy my birthday, and there were things going on during that time that definitely were not getting me to a place where I could be, of high spirits and joy and stuff like that. And so, when you go through those things, especially as you're entering deeper into adulthood, it can really be challenging to set a tone for your 20s and things of that nature when you have a lot of things like that going on. And now you're sitting in that space where depression can easily slip in. I'm an October baby, so I'm literally at the cusp of fall. And when you're coming into fall, into wintertime, that's where seasonal depression can really have the most fun with you. If the way to say it, I mean, it really can. It just happens sometimes. You never really know when it's going to hit you. You never really know if it's going to hit you. This year I definitely can say I'm fortunate enough to feel like I've been in a really good place mentally. I don't believe that I'm experiencing seasonal depression this year, which again is a blessing. But at the same time, there's still moments where you can kind of slip into a small depressive episode. I think there's just moments where you're not as high as usual, right? And not high like you smoking something, but high as, you're not in as high spirits as you may have usually operated. And that can be a number of factors. And that's something else that I really want to dissect today too, because part of this scenario or this conversation centers around this other philosophy that I really feel like a lot of people struggle with, and we don't really talk about or divulge in enough. There's this idea that I have been kind of not wrestling with, but dancing around for a minute, because I feel like it is something that makes sense in my life and the life of people around me as I go throughout life. And it's the fact that we are conditioned to prioritize the symptoms that we experience over attacking and prioritizing the actual issue, the root cause of our problems, really. And what I mean by that is there are a lot of times when people will not start moving proactively until something presents itself like a problem, right? If I know personally that, I own a car, and this is something that I learned once I, became of age. I'm owning a car, and when you own a car, you have to actually make sure that things are set in motion a proper way for your finances, because otherwise you won't be able to pay your payment, you won't pay your insurance, you want to pay your gas, things of this nature, right? There's a lot of other factors that come into the financial equation of owning a car. But if you're not proactive in actually doing that, you can fall short, right? Because for someone that has never owned a car, right, or that had never experienced having to pay for a vehicle, you're not going to know that every year you got to renew your registration, and that has a cost, right? Unless you've done it for X amount of years, or you're not going to know that when this tire pops, there's a service charge maybe for your insurance, or whatever the case may be. You're just not going to know. But it's a situation that's based off of experience, right? Versus in our lives, we see things and we're like, oh, like, yeah, I'm gonna deal with that later. Oh, I'm gonna deal with this later. Oh, these things start piling up. Case in point, sometimes for me, I would see in my space, I would actively be, in my room, and I would start to see my clothes kind of pile up a little bit, and then some clutter in this space, in my room, in this space, and I was like, yeah, this is happening. And it would just completely go away. Like in my mind, I wouldn't even think about it anymore. It just would become such a habit of just letting it happen when I see the symptoms, right? And I'm like, well, I guess I'm just going to have to deal with it, right? No, treat the symptom, right? You start to see a close problem, hey, put them in the basket, or, you know, organize your stuff a little bit, or actually be proactive and say, okay, maybe if my clothes are piling up, let me go ahead and sort them out so that they can be washed, or, you know, stuff is cluttering, okay, let me take like 5 minutes just to deal with some of this stuff for the moment and then move forward, right? And then I realized, okay, that process could work, but am I actually going to do it? Probably not. Then I also thought about it deeper, and I said, okay, well, you know, this happens constantly. This happens frequently, right? Because depression is not just limited to being seasonal. It can happen throughout the year, and it's happened to me multiple times a year sometimes. And I was looking at my situation, and I thought, why does this keep happening? Like, I can't escape this one particular situation. It's just constantly going back and forth. And I'm like, why do I keep experiencing the same exact circumstance? It doesn't make sense. I'm trying my best. I'm doing what I know how to do to fix this, but nothing's really working. And that's when I understood that it wasn't just that I personally was treating the symptom over finding the issue, finding the root problem in my situation and attacking that versus trying to attack everything else. So once I got to that point, you know, I understood it, and it takes a process of not only being aware, but accepting what's going on and then acting upon it. Because you can be aware of something happening and you choose not to deal with it. You choose not to say anything about it. You choose not to move forward on, you know, the plans for this or whatever it is. You still have a choice at the end of the day to say, yes, I'm going to do this. No, I'm not going to do that. And a lot of times we can really be our own worst enemy by being active participants and the lack of accountability that we know that we are doing, that we're putting in. We're saying, yeah, I want to do this. Yeah, I want to do that. And don't hold ourselves accountable to actually changing the bad habits or fixing the issue at hand. And so I had to start coming to a consensus in my mind. Okay, like, how do I fix this? How do I get to the solution? So, and then I started asking myself these questions, right? So for instance, you can ask yourself, what is the core issue, right? What is the root? Do I even know what that root problem is? Why am I feeling this way, right? 9 times out of 10 when you're dealing with depression, you're going to feel some type of negative emotion, which could be sadness, it could be anger, it could be frustration, it could be disgust. These things typically correlate towards negativity, which again can correlate towards you could be having a depressive episode. Not saying that every situation where you're feeling sad, angry, mad, whatever, is depression, but to say that there are possibilities when these things correlate more consistently and frequently, you could be putting yourself in that situation where you can be led to this or you're already in it. And then you start thinking, okay, what things can I do to really address this issue? Because once I figured out the issue, figured out what was going on, you know, what can I actually do to make this change because it's not working for me? There's nothing here for me. Therefore, I'm not going to be able to, you know, deal with this problem. And it was a situation when I finally understood what seasonal depression was, where I said, how do I even fix a problem that's natural, right? Because it's changing of the seasons is causing the majority of this depression. But there are ways to be able to cope. There are ways to be able to assist yourself in this. And I also want to be able to offer some of that insight as well. One thing that comes from seasonal depression or just seasons changing, let's take it there first, is that the sun is going to go down a lot earlier, right? And we always have these conversations on social media, and it's some of the funny, you know, conversations that I have seen and been a part of where people will talk about like the sun was just setting at, you know, 8, 9 o'clock, and now they move back, they give us 1 hour or take 1 hour away, and now it's completely done, it's wrapped, right? We out the door at 4:30 and the sun is about to go down. It's crazy, right? Now having this knowledge, you know, you're able to say, well, maybe I need to go ahead and take some vitamin D daily because I'm not going to be getting as much sunlight. Most of us are out here working 9-to-5 jobs, or some type of job where, you know, we may not be outside all the time. Some maybe, but not everybody. And if it's getting colder, you're not going to want to be outside all the time because naturally you can be freezing, you know what I'm saying? Unless you really like the cold like that, it's just a different scenario. So you have to be able to be proactive and say, you know, what things can I do to get me the energy that I expect out of the summertime, out of the springtime, when the sun is out, you know what I'm saying, days are longer and you're able to really enjoy being outside, being active. You know, now that I'm going to be in this space where things are a lot more, not just cold, but I need more comfort. You know, how do I make that happen for myself without pushing me back into this space where I'm depressed, you know, or, you know, I'm feeling suicidal or things of that nature. One thing that I found helpful, you know, when I was just really coping with, you know, my depression was the simple fact that I noticed the small changes in my routine, right? It would take me a little less time to go, you know, wash my face, or, you know, one day I just might not feel like doing it at all, so I'll skip, you know, one particular task. Like I might skip doing my hair at the end of the night or in the morning or something like that. You know, just one thing threw me off, and now I'm heading down to this course where, you know, oh, it's just one time, it's not gonna hurt. Oh, it's just one time, it's not gonna. And I say that every day. And so now my routine that was giving me this structure and this good solid, you know, consistency is now being deteriorated by my own inability to see the issue, which was I'm slipping. You know what I'm saying? And now that I'm slipping, I'm allowing things to be more lax. I'm allowing my room to start to pile up with stuff. I'm allowing, you know, the things that I used to do to no longer be my norm, and that's pushing me towards this depressive episode that I really can't prevent unless I saw what was going on and made decisive changes. Now, I'm not saying that just because you're going to change this, just because you're aware of this and you're active here, is going to prevent this depressive episode from happening at all, but it can help you to cope and actually bring yourself out of it a lot quicker. I feel like within the past couple of years, because I've had to be, unfortunately, I've had to be more, you know, I feel like I've had to be more real with myself and what I was feeling during the times when I was like most depressed. And when you come to a point where you're really just in such a dark place where you don't know like what's going to happen, you're just like, I don't know, you know, what tomorrow is going to bring. I don't know what the next hour is going to bring me. And it starts to get to a point where you just kind of go deep into your mind and you're trying to figure out, you know, where did I go wrong? You know, it's like, where did I go wrong? What happened? Like, where did the stars not align? You know, what was this? What was that? Like, why is this happening to me? And, you know, you get to this point where you're just constantly aware. And I think for me, coming out of a heavy depression a few years ago, and experiencing the dare I say PTSD of just how jarring it was an experience that I wasn't prepared for, really. I didn't know that was going to happen. And so when I came across the year preceding the darkest time that I was going through, I was witnessing myself have like literally visceral reactions in my body, you know, of what happened prior. And I was like, this is not happening like now, so what's going on? I was so confused. I'm like, what's going on? But I'm literally experiencing the emotions and the panic and the anxiety of, you know, what was going on at the time a year from then. And it brought me to this point where I just had to like sit with myself and really like stabilize me, because I was just so ungrounded. I was so confused, and I was like, no, please, like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be back in that place. Like, you know, when you go deep into a depression, it's dark, you know, and when you experience a space where, and I did not say trigger one at the beginning of this, but I'm probably put one at the very beginning, so that way, you know, y'all know. But, you know, when you go to a place where things just kind of go numb, it's very hard to dig yourself out of that. And a lot of people can talk about the not getting out of bed and, you know, the struggle to just be social and not isolate, but it's another thing when that's not even your biggest issue or your biggest concern, I would say. When your biggest concern is, you know, I don't want to get to a point where I don't feel anything, you know, or when you get to that point prior and then you recap it, right? So imagine a memory that you love, right? You might think back to that memory today and can just recall it word for word, bar for bar, and it's something that you really find so much joy in, so much peace in, because you love that memory. For me, if you think about it in that exact same context, that's the best way I can correlate how the PTSD of what I was experiencing or what I had experienced came back, because it was as if I was back in that same space and I was just so scared. And it was different because when you're in that space, you're numb, right? When it was first happening, I'm just numb, and I was at a point where I could just go out and drive, and I had this. This is the hardest thing to share. I was debating on sharing this, but I'm gonna share it because I mean, somebody else can be, somebody else can be helped by this, hopefully. So, but I was at a point when I was so numb where I literally was in my car, and I told some of my closest friends this. I was in a car, and I was like, if I was to get into a car accident or anything was to happen while I was on this road, it needs to take me out, because I would be so angry if it did anything but either take me out or put me in such a horrible situation where it would paralyze me, or just do something so vicious to my body. Like if it was just something that just caused a minor inconvenience, I'd be pissed. And it was so weird because I was like, oh, like why was I thinking that? Like what is this about? I was numb. I was just completely numb to, everything. And there were other things preceding that and whatnot, but overall, when you feel that and you believe you overcome it, right? For it to remix itself and bring itself back and say, hey, hey friend, we still here, or to show itself in a way that it almost feels like a ghost, like it feels like it's haunting you. And for that to happen, it was just such a uncomfortable experience. I didn't really have the best time or just the most joy during that year, because, or that season of my life, because it's, like I said, my birthday comes up around that time. So, for that to kind of be the preceding thing to lead into my birthday, I was like, damn, like I can't even enjoy my birthday because this situation is really causing me some strife, and it was really uncomfortable, so I don't even know if I've ever heard stories where people have talked about like when they were depressed and the PTSD of where you were and just how that can haunt you, because I feel like it is possibly a form of PTSD, or just the memories are traumatic, to the point where they just haunt you afterwards. It's dark. It's dark. It's really, really a dark place to be in, and I don't wish that for anyone, and I hope that those that are dealing with their issues now and, just living in that, I hope that you're able to pull yourself out, or have the support around you to help you do that. Because even for myself, I really had this conversation recently, and when you're in a place where you are considering suicide and suicidal ideation is in your forefront of your mind, I had to have this conversation, and I was just like, though it is true that there are people that will say, I didn't do it because thinking about my mom, thinking about my family, thinking about this person. That's very true, right? Because even for myself, that was very true. But also, it's a fact of finding your personal why outside of other people. Because when I chose life for myself, not just for the people around me. My life, assists and it does things for people around me, but I had to choose me. I had to choose to love myself. I had to choose to, live in my truth. And it was definitely very difficult because I had to take every day, literally, day by day, every moment, day by day, every time, day by day. There was a point where I would literally go walk, and I would walk on this trail every single day, and that was really just giving me life. It was revitalizing me, it was strengthening me, and during that time, it was just, it renewed a new thing in me, and I'm thankful, I'm blessed to still be on this earth, and be here. And I really feel like, though it was a very hard struggle, I feel like it really goes with the title, like, what seasonal depression did for me, because that particular situation was a mix, and that's why I feel like it was so vicious. I've had different depressive episodes throughout the years, none of which were as potent as that, because not only was that a mixture of seasonal depression, it was also grief, right? And I was grieving at the time that I was experiencing this seasonal depression, and everything was really overlapping to the point where it was fucking me up, so I literally was at a point where it was just bad for it was bad for your man. It was bad for your man. But like I said, I'm glad I'm out of that space. I'm glad I'm here, and I'm glad I'm still kicking. And yeah, I think if I had to give any advice to anybody dealing with this, is find your true core of yourself, right? Because I feel like there's always we are built with a light inside of us, and I do serve a higher power. I feel like God is definitely the reason why I'm still here, for sure, because that's who I found outside in nature on the trail, in a new way, in my own way, right? It's there's a light inside of you that was put in you before you were born, and that light can change things for you, for other people, and everything else in between. And when you embrace it, I think you see yourself in a different light, because sometimes when you're dealing with depression, you can see yourself in such a bad way. But when you really find that light, or even it could be just a matchstick, and you spark that light, you ignite it, something happens, right? And for me, I feel like that's what God ignited that in me to, show it to me. He kind of just revealed it to me in this space of just like, you are supposed to be here. You're supposed to, operate on this plane of existence, and you're supposed to, follow down this course and this path, and I'm going to help you, I'm going to guide you, I'm going to lead you, and it was something that you really have to, it's something that you have to make a decision for, right? And life is all about decisions. You're constantly deciding something. I'm deciding what to say before I say it. I'm deciding whether I'm going to look left, to the right, whoever. But at the end of the day, trust in the decisions that you make. Be confident in those decisions, because I feel like I never want to make a decision because I'm unsure. I want to be fully sure about what I'm doing, right? And even if I'm stepping out on faith in this decision, I still want to be sure about what I'm doing. And I want to trust that, it was a decision that I made solely because I chose to make it. And it wasn't a matter of another person, having to influence me into a decision, not peer pressure, not whatever. I want to be able to say, I made that decision for me, for the best course for me. And that's what I had to live in that, As I close this episode, I really just want y'all to take away that, your mental space is probably one of the most important spaces for you to maintain in good standings. And when you don't, things can definitely occur that you may not want to. Negative things can occur. And when we're sitting in spaces and seasons in our lives where things may seem bad, they may seem gloomy, especially when we're sitting in a season where the depression can rise up just because of the fact that the sun is going down, more frequently than you would in the summertime, where it's getting colder outside, so you want to be inside more, you want to isolate more. These factors are something we should be aware of. They're something that we should really be sure to take our time with, because I'm never saying that you can prevent it fully, but I am saying that you could try your best, if you can try your best, to be as aware as possible and act accordingly. Because I'm not going to pressure you to say, oh, do it like this, do it like that. You know what I'm saying? And even in advice that I could give, I'm not the end all be all, author of, the perfect plan for this. Because this seasonal depression is not something that's planned. It can just happen. Like I said, I'm not dealing with it this year, and that's a blessing, but I didn't know that. I didn't know that before it came this way. You know what I'm saying? I'm just thinking, okay, life is going to be good. I'm just going to keep moving and see what happens. And, when something happens, it just happens, and you just kind of go with the flow. But, make sure that you act accordingly. right? And try your best to be as proactive as possible instead of being very reactive to your situation, because if you can do your best to prevent it, it won't take as much control over you. And it only can really take as much control over you as you allow it. But if your strength comes prior, if you use the strength that you have now to reinforce the things that are helping you, that are assisting you to stay afloat, then maybe, just maybe, you can actually weather out the storm. You know, if you already had something anchored, like for me, it'll be real, like I'm really anchored in God to where, you know what I'm saying, I got him to rely on and it's helping me with my journey in my life, you know, in general. And so when I can be anchored in God and my faith is grounded there, that's where I have the most control, because I know I can control the faith that I have in God, and God got the rest. You know what I'm saying? I'm still operate the same way I need to operate. I'm still move where I gotta move, but I know that at least I'm grounded in something that's larger than me, and definitely can see way farther than I can. So I encourage y'all, throughout the storms that you're going through, throughout the situations, the depression, whatever it is, even if it's just anxiety, I really heavily encourage you, as you're dealing with day-to-day situations, be proactive, don't be reactive, and try your best. That's all I can ask for. Just try your best. You're not perfect, I'm not perfect, none of us are. But the least we can do is try our best, especially for ourselves. Alright, this is the end of the episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you found a lot of good information from this to help your journeys. And hopefully my story can help you, or just, you know, show you that you may not be alone in this process. Even some of us that you would least expect it go through some very challenging times. So I love you guys. This is the end. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast if you're on Spotify, or if you're listening, or wherever you're listening. Subscribe to the podcast, and make sure that you check out some of the visuals on YouTube. If you're on other platforms, if you're on Spotify, you should be able to see it now. And without further ado, peace, love, Phenix.